fun to be a horror fan. I'm not even a huge horror fan, but you know what? I'm going to come over and join you guys because these smart, high-quality productions are not only impressive, but wildly entertaining. I'm talking about Get Out, It, and now A Quiet Place. And you know what? I'm going to throw 10 Cloverfield Lane and Split in there too. And you know who produced A Quiet Place? Michael freaking Bay. He actually produces a lot of horror movies. He's behind the Purge franchise. Now, he does that one with Jason Blum, and you might think, well, it's all Blum. But this is Bay. You know, Bay is the main producer here through his company Platinum Dunes. So clearly, creatively, there's more to him than meets the eye. But the person who's really going to benefit from this movie, as they should, is Jim from The Office. He's directing, he's co-writing, he's co-starring. And while I wouldn't say he's an auteur director, I wasn't aware of his creative vision so much while watching the movie. But after having seen it, you realize his ability to deliver a slick, complete, and profound horror package, that's right, profound, is mighty impressive. And I would actually put his movie on par with those other films I just listed. And I hope that it enjoys the same success and recognition. And I think it will, because the buzz for this movie coming out of South by Southwest, where it premiered, has been anything but quiet. However, when the movie starts, you're going to think that I have lied to you, because the first half of this film is super slow. And by the time John Krasinski and his real-life wife, Emily Blunt, were slow dancing in silence, I was like, those South by Southwest people lied to me. But then, after the movie is over, because you might think, well, I don't care how good the second half is, Grace. That first half shouldn't have been so boring. But here's the thing. You realize that slow, quiet first half of the movie was to prepare you for the roller coaster ride that is the second half of the movie, which is honestly one of the most terrifying movies I have ever seen. I don't have a high threshold for being able to take scares, to be honest with you. But this movie, I couldn't even look at the screen most of the time. I was like, I'm just going to listen to it. I was so scared. I can't stress just how much this movie had me in its grip. And I loved it. I had a very good time. Now, for instance, I couldn't understand how this family was able to keep quiet, especially from the jump scares in the movie. Like John Krasinski was like, oh, I'm going to go look out this window and see if there's a monster outside of it. And I was like, how are you going to keep from screaming when his head pops up, right? I would just duck and cover in like a little hole and be like, when I don't hear them anymore, I'll come out. This family had amazing self-control. I guess under the circumstances they had to, but the movie really will make you think, could I keep quiet in these circumstances? But again, that's how much it got me. Now, why is the movie so successful? Why is it so terrifying? Well, I have 3 reasons that I think is the answer. Now, the first is that the monsters that are hunting them are not only very well designed, but also very well realized VFX-wise. This movie cost just $17 million to make, and I'm convinced that a very large portion of that was spent on visual effects. They are of the caliber of the highest blockbuster. And you really get to see them on screen too. This isn't like, oh, there's a monster elbow. They do that too. But eventually, you get full monster. And while some of their behavior doesn't make sense when you think about it, and we'll discuss it in the spoiler review, it never occurred to me while I was watching the movie. I was really impressed and blown away. It was great stuff. And even now that I've realized some problems with it, I still wouldn't take points off the movie because it didn't occur to me while I was watching. It was really good. All right, then 2, this movie uses the domino effect brilliantly. Like a seemingly small mistake triggers a series of increasingly bigger ones and bigger problems, very much like real life. This family made a lot of mistakes. We'll talk about the family momentarily. So the first half is a lot about setting up those dominoes to fall for the second half. So think about that. Setting up dominoes, boring. Watching them all fall quickly, exciting. So that's how you have to feel about the first half of the movie. It needed to do the work. Now 3, the quiet. The quiet actually works because I think it pulls you in closer to the story. It's like when someone's like, come closer, and then they go, boo, and you jump because they put you in that moment. I think that's what amplifies the scares. Because you think about it and you're like, I've seen scary movies kind of in the same vein before, where monsters are chasing people around on a farm. But the quiet, I think, just makes everything so much more heightened. So you're more vulnerable to eventually being scared out of your damn mind. Now, luckily, nobody in my theater, because it was a press screening and they had security watching us like hawks, not to have our phones on. So nobody made any noise. But there was a crucial moment during the movie when John Krasinski and Emily Blunt were actually able to have a conversation, and a whispered conversation. And some people outside the theater decided to have a really loud discussion. I mean, it wasn't their fault. They didn't know it was playing inside. And I think, they were just talking normal volume. Well, actually, they were a little bit loud. But, if a regular movie had been playing inside our theater, it wouldn't have been a problem. But here, they were kind of like background noise during this crucial moment. So I worry about people having a good viewing experience with this movie. Like, going into it, I thought it would be fun if people made jokes and chimed in and said a bunch of stuff during the beginning of the movie. But now that I think about how important it is to get you to that place to experience the second half, maybe that would keep that from happening. So I think that when you go and see this movie, and I of course highly recommend that you do, you might want to consider a matinee or even a morning show, and maybe even paying extra for a premium theater. Just doing whatever you can to make sure you're with an audience that's going to appreciate this and want to have the experience as it's meant to be, and not mess it up just because they're not taking it too seriously. So then, in addition to this movie being terrifying, here's another warning for you. It is extremely sad. Wow, it actually made me burst into tears, which really surprised me. I was like, am I crying? Because I didn't like the family very much. And in fact, I almost was like, this is too sad. I was really sad. But you know what? If John Krasinski can elicit that kind of emotional reaction for me, again, for characters I did not really like, well, then I have to say kudos to him. Now, why didn't I like the family? Again, no spoilers. But not only did they make we're in a horror movie mistakes, if they didn't make mistakes, there'd be no movie, obviously, right? The end, they did everything perfectly. Good job, family. But also, they're very bland and devoid of defined personalities. So often, one thing I'll say to you is that, there's an argument about what child can do what chores on the farm. And they seem to be dividing it along gender lines. And you would think that, in a modern film, this is supposed to take place in the near future, that the daughter would be like, really? Post-apocalyptic gender rules? Are you kidding me with this? We're the only people practically left on Earth. Who cares? Don't worry, I didn't spoil anything. So you would think that the conversations never went to that kind of real personal level. The characters didn't feel like real people in many ways. And then also, for instance, Emily Blunt's character at the beginning of the movie is pregnant. So again, not a spoiler. And you're like, why would anyone have a baby in this situation? But they never discuss the pros and cons. I would have loved for them to be like, maybe this is a John Connor baby, and we have to have it. But the more, we'll talk about this a lot in the spoiler review. But thinking about it after I saw the movie last night, I think that maybe that was intentional as well, though, to make the family more ciphers so you can imagine yourself in this situation. And I did do that. As I said, I was like, could I stay quiet in this situation? And I think maybe giving them more personality would have made the experience less intimate and kept the audience at more of a distance. So I'm still breaking this movie down in my head as to why it works so well, why it's so effective. But what I am sure of is that it is an incredibly well-constructed movie. Wow. Probably not since Inception has a film been able to manipulate me emotionally and mentally to exactly where it wants me. Now, Inception, for instance, made me question reality for a few days. That's impressive. But I didn't love the film because ultimately I thought it relied on cheap tricks. But A Quiet Place, I think because maybe it's a smaller film, it created such an emotional, intimate experience, and it both terrified and made me very sad, that it really got me. I think this is just a really well-made film. It's almost like a magic trick. I'm that impressed with it. So yeah, don't miss this movie. It's very special. And protect your movie-going experience with this. Really think ahead. Be like this family. How are you going to make sure that you're in an audience that stays quiet? I almost wish that they would make an announcement being like, you might be tempted to chime in, but you got to trust the movie and go with it, or you're not going to really experience it the way it's meant to. And you're not going to be able to experience that magic trick. And yes, John Krasinski is definitely a triple threat to keep an eye on going forward. Yay, Jim! I'm so happy for him. It looked for a while like he wasn't going to make it. Let's see how his Jack Ryan series is on Amazon. But anyway, that's my review of A Quiet Place. Be sure to share your own thoughts down below. If you've seen the movie, do not spoil it, please. Again, let people experience that magic trick. Save your comments for the spoiler review. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.